Book of Daedra. These are excerpts from this lengthy tome describing the nature of each of the Daedra. Azura, whose sphere is dusk and dawn, the magic in between realms of twilight, known as Moonshadow, mother of the rose and queen of the night sky. Boethia, whose sphere is deceit and conspiracy, and the secret plots of murder, assassination, treason, and unlawful overthrow of authority. Clavicus Vile, whose sphere is the granting of power and wishes through ritual invocations and pact. Hermaeus Mora, whose sphere is scrying of the tides of fate, of the past and future as read in the stars and heavens, and in whose dominion are the treasures of knowledge and memory. Hircine, whose sphere is the hunt, the sport of Daedra, the great game, the chase, known as the huntsman and the father of man-beasts. Malacath, whose sphere is the patronage of the spurned and ostracized, the keeper of the sworn oath and the bloody curse. Mehrunes Dagon, whose sphere is destruction, change, revolution, energy, and ambition. Mephala, whose sphere is obscured to mortals, known by the names Webspinner, Spinner, and Spider, whose only consistent theme seems to be interference in the affairs of mortals for her amusement. Meridia, whose sphere is obscured to mortals, who is associated with the energies of living things. Molag Bal, whose sphere is the domination and enslavement of mortals, whose desire is to harvest the souls of mortals and to bring mortals' souls within his sway by spreading seeds of strife and discord in the mortal realms. Namira, whose sphere is the ancient darkness, known as the spirit Daedra, ruler of sundry dark and shadowy spirits, associated with spiders, insects, slugs, and other repulsive creatures which inspire mortals with an instinctive revulsion. Nocturnal, whose sphere is the night and darkness, who is known as the Night Mistress. Periite, whose sphere is the ordering of the lowest orders of oblivion, known as the Taskmaster. Sanguine, whose sphere is hedonistic revelry and debauchery, and passionate indulgences of darker natures. Sheogorath, whose sphere is madness, and whose motives are unknowable. Vermina, whose sphere is the realm of dreams and nightmares, and from whose realm issues forth evil omens. Especially marked for special interest under the heading Malacath, you find a reference to Scourge, blessed by Malacath and dedicated to the use of mortals. In short, the reference suggests that any Daedra attempting to invoke the weapon's powers will be expelled into the void streams of oblivion. Of the legendary artifacts of the Daedra, many are well known, like Azura's Star and Sheogorath's Wabbajack. Others are less well known, like Scourge, Makan's Hammer, and Bane of Daedra. Yet though Malacath blessed Scourge to be potent against his Daedric kin, he thought not that it should fall into Daedric hands, than to serve as a tool for private war among caitiff and forsaken. Thus did Malacath curse the device such that, should any dark kin seek to invoke its powers, that a void should open and swallow that Daedra, and purge him into oblivion's void streams, from thence to pathfind back to the real and unreal worlds in the full order of time. The Book of Daedra is perhaps many people's introduction to the Daedric Princes, even though it only refers to them as Daedra and not the Daedric Princes. It's interesting that at the beginning of the book it refers to it as a lengthy tome, stating that what we're reading are simply excerpts from what in reality is much longer. The book is straightforward, giving simple descriptions of the Daedric Princes, all of which is accurate. One thing to note about Vermina is that it's misspelled in the book. The book spells it Vaernima, Vernima, but it's supposed to be Vaermina, Vermina. A simple typo of just switching around the N and M letters. Towards the end of the book, we get another parenthetical section, just like in the beginning, implying that this is something our character notices about the book, not something that's actually in the book itself. and then it quotes the section it's drawing our attention to. This section is a description of a weapon called Scourge, a weapon that Malacath blessed to be especially effective against Daedra and their minions, but also cursed so that if any of the Daedra tried to use the weapon against other Daedra, they would be cast into the Void Stream. The Void Stream, well, we don't really know what the writer is talking about. They could be referring to the Void, which is the realm of Sithis, a vast nothingness, a void. But this doesn't really seem to be the case because it doesn't say they are cast into the void, but rather that, end quote, a void should open up and swallow that Daedra and purge him into Oblivion's void stream, end quote. So my best guess on that is that it's simply talking about the spaces in between the different planes of Oblivion, but I'm not really sure. There doesn't seem to be any other mentions of it. I do find it interesting that the game goes out of its way to talk about Scourge only. Not really sure why. But why would Malacath create such a weapon to begin with? That I believe I can answer. Here's the abridged version, as I'm sure we'll come across the full story at some point. According to legend, which is pretty much all we have to work with when it comes to the origin of Malacath, it is said that Malacath was once Trinamac, an ancient and powerful Aldemari ancestor spirit who was devoured by Boethia. One source specifically says later on that Boethia, end quote, squeezed out a great pile of dung, end quote. Trinamac was found within and had now been corrupted and became the Daedric Prince Malacath. If that is true, it's not hard to see why Malacath would hold such resentment and malice towards the other Daedra, and it would also explain why many of the Daedric Princes are said to look down upon Malacath as lesser than. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me what you think about this book in the comments below. And may the blessings of the 8 Divines be upon you.